Good morning, everyone.
Oh,
Welcome.
I'm sorry, Steve. It says preparing to live stream. It gave me a false start. So it needs
Let me
just
know
another
when
30 seconds.
we can wait.
Almost there, queuing up.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Sorry, Steve. It says preparing to live stream. It gave me a false start. So it needs just another 30 seconds. Okay, there's a little bit of lag on YouTube, but it works. We are live now.
Okay, I guess this is take two. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a public hearing of the Illinois Supreme Court Statutory Court Fees Task Force. My name is Stephen Flom. I'm a partner in the Chicago law firm of Neil Gerber and Eisenberg, LLP, and I have the privilege of being the chair of the task force. I'm sure that those who are watching and participating in today's public hearing, I have some familiarity with the task force, but let me take just a few moments to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what the task force's responsibilities are and what we intend to accomplish today. And then I'm going to ask, after I do that, the members of the public who are joining us today, and we're very glad you're here, to identify themselves so that we have your names and affiliations for the record. We do have a court reporter who's transcribing today's hearing so that the task force members will be able to consult the testimony and the public as well to the extent that that's desired. So again, as I'm sure that everybody knows, the Illinois Supreme Court created the Statutory Court Fees Task Force essentially to follow up on the CTAA legislation that was enacted in response to the efforts of the original Statutory Court Fees Task Force. The CTAA made significant changes to the system in our state for the imposition of court fees and costs, or what the legislation called assessments, in civil, criminal, and traffic cases. The Supreme Court has created this task force in order to look at the implementation of the CTAA, to identify any issues with the implementation and perhaps some corrections that may be needed, and also to look at the possibility of additional initiatives to build on the measures that were part of the original legislation. The task force is comprised of judges, lawyers, court clerks, and members of the Illinois General Assembly. And we are assisted by members of the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts, who play a key role in helping us discharge our responsibilities. The task force has been eager to make sure that to cast as wide a net as possible, to make sure that we are aware of whatever issues have arisen and whatever perhaps additional initiatives are worthy of consideration, ultimately in the form of potential legislation for consideration by the General Assembly, or for additional Supreme Court rules to be promulgated by the Supreme Court. So in casting as wide a net as possible, we have solicited input, and we have received happily some written comments and suggestions from a number of organizations, and we welcome those and will pay careful attention to them. Today's hearing, of course, is part of that public outreach as well, where we are seeking from any interested individuals and organizations your thoughts and ideas for consideration by the task force. So that's basically what the task force is about and what we hope to accomplish today. So let me try to identify the names that I see in our Zoom windows, or at least names that I'm not sure that I recognize, to have you, I'll try to call on you individually, and then if I've missed anybody who's not a member of the task force and is participating via Zoom, I'll ask that you identify yourself and whether you're planning on testifying and the organization, or perhaps you're doing so individually. So let me start. The first name that I see that who I don't believe is affiliated with the task force is identified by Kay's iPad. Is that Mr. Miller by any chance?
Yes, it is. Yes,
So
thank you.
please identify yourself for the record, please, and any organization you may be testifying on behalf of.
Yeah, my name is Larry Miller. I am the chairman of the Franklin County Board down in Southern Illinois. And I wanted to make some comments and participate in this.
Great. Well, welcome, Mr. Miller, and thank you for participating. The next name that I'm not sure that I recognize is Candace Adams. Ms. Adams, can you please identify yourself and whether you're planning on testifying?
Good morning. I'm Candace Adams. I'm the clerk of the circuit court for DuPage County, and I would like to give testimony today.
Great. Thank you and welcome. The next name that I believe is one of the public members is Kahala Clay. Ms. Clay, can you please identify yourself?
Good morning. My name is Kahala Clay, and I'm the clerk of the circuit court in St. Clair County, Illinois. And I'd like to give testimony this morning on behalf of the Illinois Association of Court Clerks, along with Ms. Adams.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Clay. Appreciate you joining us today. I see a phone number. I'm not sure if that's a member of the public or not. It is an area code 815 telephone number. Is that individual who's currently muted, is that individual affiliated with the task force, or would that be a member of the public? That person is still muted. I don't know if I can unmute them or not. All right, well, hopefully they will identify themselves if they do wish to testify. Have I missed anyone? Let me
Hi, I'm actually the person on the telephone. My name is Andrea Lynn Chastain. I am the circuit clerk of Will County. I am not testifying today. I am just listening to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Thank you for identifying yourself. And then the last name that I'm not sure that I recognize is Holly Lemons. Ms. Lemons?
Good morning. I'm Holly Lemons, Montgomery County Circuit Clerk, and I am also just observing. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome, Ms. Lemons. Thank you for joining us. I thought earlier I had seen, I believe the name of the lobbyist for the Circuit Clerks Association, Britton Bolin, but I'm not seeing that name now. So is Ms. Bolin on the Zoom or not? And have I missed anyone else, any other members of the public who are participating by Zoom? Okay, that seems to be, looks like I've caught everybody up till now. So again, in the notice of the public hearing, we allotted 10 minutes for our speakers, but we want to hear what you have to say. And I'd also encourage the members of the task force to feel free to ask questions of our speakers as well. And so speakers, don't worry that if you are asked questions, it's going to cut into the amount of time you have to speak. We want to hear everything you have to say, so you won't feel squeezed by time. We don't have any significant time constraints, I think, this morning. So let me start with Mr. Miller and ask you to please present your testimony. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all, and I want to identify some problems. I am new as county chairman, and I've been baptized with a fire hose, so I'm a bit challenged with the technology, but I will try to do the best I can. One of the things that has happened because of the enactment of this legislation in our county, we have seen a sizable reduction of income for us in the county, to the point of it's affecting our ability. Of course, we've had struggles in the past and with our budgets and whatever. Excuse me. And basically, the loss of income that we've seen has been as much as 5.7% of our budget. And that's affecting us tremendously. And I realize that that may not be as big a concern for the legislation, but I want to make a couple other statements too, that for rural Illinois, this has been a real problem for us. And I was looking at the synopsis of the bill, and one of the things that I think it presumes a little bit that because of the court fees and whatever has been unfair, and that the court is unfair. And I just don't feel like that is the case. I think that in our county, and I know that our system is not perfect anywhere in the country, because we are all human and we make mistakes. But the fact that one of the things that concerns me about the legislation is if we don't have, when we have law, the only way to enforce law is there be some kind of punishment for that. And it's a very simple concept, and I'm really concerned. In our rural areas, we're very fortunate that we, safety is a issue to us, and we've been fortunate that we don't have the issues that many people have in urban areas. But it's coming to our areas because of the fact that I believe that we need enforcement of the law, and the only way you can do that is through the court system. And then we look at eventually a no cash bail is going to be a problem for us. And I view it in our area as just an incursion into our system that is concerning for us. I'm a simple guy. I'm a farmer, actually, and I like things simple. And I think most things can be simple. But I think that there is never, I've raised 3 children, and in raising those kids who are functioning adults today, and I thank my wife for that, much of that, was that really raising those kids and trying to get them to understand the values that we endorse and that right and wrong had to be sometimes enforced with some kind of punishment. And I think, as I see it in our system today, we're moving away from that. And if we don't deal with minor problems, they become bigger problems. People who engage in shoplifting eventually move to other things, probably. Not always, but many times. And so I think the value of enforcement, and some of that involves court fees, whatever, is an important aspect to our communities and our society. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And I certainly do appreciate the opportunity to voice that.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do any task force members have any questions that they wish to pose to Mr. Miller? Judge Robb. Oh, we're not hearing you at the moment. Technical difficulties. We've all seen them during the last 16 months.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Great.
Sorry.
Okay.
Chairman Miller, you said you've experienced a 5.7% reduction in the budget. Is that overall, or is that in the court budget or specific departments?
Yes, that it reflects total income to our budget and our general fund.
Have you had to do any layoffs of staff?
Well, we are in the process right now. There's been a lot of changes on our board in the last 6 months, and we are trying to negotiate some contracts with the labor unions and trying to get our arms around the budget. But I believe that is a very strong possibility that will happen. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And since our budget, much of our budget is in our sheriff's office and then also in the circuit clerks, those areas will be affected because they are such a big portion of our budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the members of the task force? Judge Fiello.
Chairman Miller, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I'm from Southern Illinois as well, over in Jackson County. So I always appreciate representation from the South. My question is, first of all, about the budget reduction, 5.7%. Was that caused completely by the reduction in bail, or were there other reasons for that?
Well, when I look at, and you're asking me some specifics that may be difficult for me to handle, but from our circuit clerk, our total fees that we collected, that's total, that we look at criminal fees, clerk fees. When you add all of those up, and the bottom line is where I come up with a 5.7% reduction.
So these are all fees collected by the clerk then?
Yes, and the sheet that I have here is the total, all the line items, and then looking at, but the main ones are from, in fact, is all of them actually are from the county criminal fees and the circuit clerk fees. And I would be glad to provide that information if someone would like to see that.
That would be great if you could do that.
So will someone tell me how I do that? Email it to the task force?
Yes, please. And Ms. Yusman, what's the correct email address that Chairman Miller should use to send that information to?
Yes, it is my full name, so I'll spell it out. The email address would be HAYLEYUSSMAN@illinoiscourts.gov.
And Ms. Yusman, what I'd suggest is after the hearing, if you could send an email to Chairman Miller. I believe we have his email address. So he'll have it that way as well.
Yes,
I think I have enough information to be able to get that to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions for Chairman Miller from members of the task force? Judge Doherty.
Good morning, Chairman Miller. I know that we've also up here in Winnebago and Boone counties had some decrease in revenue. But what makes it hard to sort out the cause is that we went through this period with COVID. We had foreclosures not being filed. Those were big fees. We had a lot of evictions not being filed. We had citations not being filed, and we had police departments that for a time were kind of not charging the way they used to charge. Have you been able to sort out how much of your 5.7% is due to the Criminal and Traffic Assessment Act as opposed to this unusual year and a half that we've been just gone through?
That's a very good question. I think I can answer that correctly, but the information I have in front of me actually we looked at previously to June 2018, and then from July, sorry about that, was when this law took effect was actually in 2019, and we began right there. And it doesn't appear that the COVID was the issue. That was pre-COVID. So those numbers I'm giving you right now are pre-COVID.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'd like to ask at least one question. Chairman Miller, obviously a reduction in income of the magnitude that you've described is a significant consideration. And I can say that the original task force was mindful of concerns about impacting the revenues of public entities. One of the things that the original legislation, that the legislation does, is it establishes caps for different classes and types of court assessments. And what we found in response to the act was that many counties actually raised their assessments to the maximum levels that are permitted by the legislation. And so my question for you is, do you know whether or not your county changed their assessment levels in response to the legislation? And do you know if you are currently at the maximum levels authorized by the legislation?
It is I don't know if I can answer that completely. I don't think that we have changed it since the legislation was enacted, but I don't know where we were at before, but I can provide that information also when I email the other information.
That would be very helpful. If your clerk can provide you with a fee schedule, then we
Yes.
can compare that with the amounts allowed to see whether or not the current legislation would allow adjustments to be made.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chairman Miller? Okay, again, thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to receiving the additional information from you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have two additional witnesses, both circuit clerks, and perhaps the two of you have talked about who'd like to go first. And if you have, whatever you've decided is fine. Ms. Clay?
Yes.
All right, the
Okay.
floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you so much to each of you on the Supreme Court Statutory Task Force for giving the Illinois Association of Court Clerks the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Kahala Clay, and I'm the Circuit Clerk in St. Clair County. And we want to start by saying that as an association, we are here in the spirit of partnership, not opposition. As an essential court partner within the criminal justice and justice system as a whole, we're here to work together with you and not against you as you move forward. And we are here in a spirit of reform as well. So as an association, we are completely for reform and equity and justice. And as an African-American woman born and raised in East St. Louis and a former criminal defense counsel for indigent people, I am all for criminal justice reform. So we want to see people have greater access to justice. We want people to have their due process and all those things. But as we move forward in reform and equity, we would really hope that we can have equal energy in terms of trying to find either alternative funding or maybe scaling back, or at least taking a moment to pause and see just how things are going to be impacted in terms of revenue, which is why you all have been brought together. We are here today asking, as we continue to forge a way for reform, that equal consideration is given to the dedicated men and women who work in the circuit clerk's offices, who work in the probation departments, who work in the public defender agencies, who, work in animal control, because the decreases in revenue won't just impact our offices, but as the chairman just stated, it will impact the county as a whole and the people who work every day to serve the people in and out of the system. Continued legislation and initiatives will cut revenues needed to fund the system, and layoffs will be inevitable because the monies to support salaries and benefits will not be available. The starting salary in the circuit clerk's office here in St. Clair County is $28,000 a year before taxes. And many of the deputies here are single mothers with children, and layoffs as a result of a lack of funding could be life altering for those families if we don't come up with alternative ways to fund the justice system. Just to give you a little perspective, Candace and I, we do have some actual numbers for you this morning. Soft stops in conjunction with the Secretary of State's office, many of you know those as failure to pay. A soft stop was placed on a person's license, prohibiting them, not suspending their license, but prohibiting them from renewing their license until the money ordered by the court was paid in full. From 2011 to 2021, soft stops here in St. Clair County were $4,043,000 $699.95. 2020 alone saw $309,743.51 brought into the courts and into county government just from soft stops alone. And the current legislation that has come about as the result for reform has stopped soft stops. July 1 was it. So that $4 million that this county has received just for soft stops alone ceases permanently at this point. And that is going to be a revenue hit that I don't know how we are going to overcome. Someone mentioned cash bail already this morning. That is going to be another multi-million-dollar hit on top of the $4 million for soft stops. And again, as we continue to compile these initiatives and efforts, it's going to become harder and harder for counties and the families who work in the counties to be able to continue to work and continue to provide employment for these families. Again, we want reform, but there must be an effort to provide alternatives and funding so that the court system is still able to function and men and women in our communities can still have their jobs. Extending fee waivers beyond the current guidelines to traffic and DUIs will potentially cause deficits that will never be overcome. Thank you so much for your time, and I will happily answer any questions that you have this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Clay. Task force members, who would like to ask questions of Ms. Clay? Mr. Badlani.
Thank you, Clerk Clay, for testifying today and for sharing your thoughts. I was just curious if, as of yet, or if the association is thinking through some of these issues when you mentioned alternative sources of funding. So let's say the current legislation remains and potential expansions of other waivers are expanded. Does the association sort of have a position on, say, a unified, fully funded court system, on other alternatives that might sort of fill some of these gaps, or started to identify some of those alternative sources, rather than, say, the suggestion of, say, going back to instituting some of these fees?
Well, I don't think that our position is going back to instituting any of those things, because again, I completely understand, having represented many people at their bond hearings, there's always been a difference between people who had means and who didn't. So again, we understand the need. And so we have been asked to come up with some ideas, and we are trying our best to come up with ideas. It's kind of a little difficult sometimes to take off your judicial hat and put on a legislative hat. And so we are really trying. There has been some editing of the court, the circuit clerk admin fund. We are looking at changing that to be able to be shifted more directly to clerk funding or circuit clerk funding and judicial funding. But that's just one idea that is in its infancy stage. And so that's why we're reaching out to we've testified quite a bit over the last 6 weeks to 8 weeks, just really trying to get our views out there. And so people can really understand that access to justice may be no more if we don't come up with a plan. So thank you for your question. We will continue to try to come up with other ideas, and we just really hope that we will be heard when we come up with those ideas, and they can be implemented if they're feasible. We're very reasonable. We're very reasonable people. So
thank you very much.
Any additional questions for Clerk Clay? Judge Fiello.
Good morning. You cited a figure on the soft stop money for, say, 2020, over $300,000. Is that for the county as a whole or just your office?
So I believe that my office is the circuit clerk's office is the only office that does soft stops with the Secretary of State. As far as our court fees. So yes, so that would be just the circuit clerk's office for 2021. And someone also mentioned COVID numbers. In 2020, we did $465,386.97 on soft stops. So even in a pandemic, it was still a means for providing revenue.
I'd like to ask you if you know at this point, is how do you intend to deal with just that particular loss of income?
Come talk to you. I mean, we really, that's why we're here. We see the train coming down the track and what it could mean for the families that work throughout the county, not just here. And so we do not know. And so that's why we're asking for anyone, legislation, the legislators and everyone to just help us come up with another way.
So if that particular amount of money is just lost and it's not replaced in any way, is that going to result in layoffs?
Absolutely. Because
Thank
it's
you.
that in conjunction with cash bond, in conjunction with other initiatives. So yes, it will.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Judge Doherty.
Yeah, I know that sometimes when other people hear, my budget went down by this amount, our eyes glaze over and think, yeah, that's fine. You'll figure a way around that. What in terms of services to the public or your ability to serve your statutory obligations to the courts would be jeopardized if there were additional cuts of this nature? Or I should say reductions of this nature.
That is a wonderful question. And actually, Candace is going to speak to that directly. And she actually has scenarios and numbers. So Candace will speak directly to that judge.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll look forward to hearing that. But before we get there, does anyone else have any questions for Clerk Clay? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Very, very important testimony. And now the floor is Clerk Adams.
Steve, Jonathan Pilsner
Sorry.
has his hand up.
I'm sorry, who had a hand up?
Jonathan Pilsner had a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it wasn't on my screen. Mr.
No,
Pilsner, question for Clay. Go right ahead.
I apologize for having an unstable internet connection and can't connect to video. Ms. Clay, thank you for your testimony. I know that there are a lot of different things that are coming to bear on the finances of clerks' offices, specifically the CTAA and all of these fees, which is what this task force is sort of focused on, as well as money bail, the driver's license reform. Do your offices have detailed numbers or the ability to examine the data to give this task force an understanding of exactly how specific changes in the law have impacted it? Because I know we're talking about a lot of broad numbers, but if we go back in time to see, are your offices able to provide that information and give us that sort of data if we wanted to look at it more closely?
Sure, we can get you whatever it is that you would need to be able to have a bigger picture, or should I say a more finite picture of what you need to be able to be informed on the decisions that you will make. So we would be happy to get that information to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Clerk Clay? All right, hopefully I'm not overlooking anyone with a raised hand at the moment, and I believe that means that Clerk Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, and it is a pleasure to speak before you all today. My name is Candace Adams, and I am the clerk of the Circuit Court for the 18th Judicial Circuit, which encompasses DuPage County. Before taking office in December, I was an attorney who had the privilege of accessing clerk's office throughout the state, and I've been asked to present to you the financial impact we believe reduction in court costs and fees could have on this office and the second largest county in Illinois. I would like to start off, like Clerk Clay said, by saying that I fundamentally agree with much of the criminal justice reform that is currently taking place in the state. It is my position that the budget of a judicial system should not be tied to the amount of crime committed, We should not have a system where policing is encouraged because it's a way to generate revenue, nor should we have a system that shows favoritism to those with means. I am here today, however, to discuss some of the financial impact we believe changes to the CTAA, including fee waivers, will have on circuit court clerks' offices throughout Illinois. Using fee waivers on traffic, DUI, and misdemeanor cases as an example, I would like to illustrate the financial impact a decrease in fee could have in DuPage County. For historical reference, in 2019, because 2020 was an anomaly, there were over 108,000 of these cases filed in DuPage, and over 90% of the fees and fines associated with them were paid without fee waiver. Most of these tickets and most of these cases get paid and they do not have fee waivers on them. Determining the financial impact fee waivers may have on these type of cases is an imperfect science. We believe, however, after analyzing the numbers, including the number of these cases, which include traffic, DUI, and misdemeanor, and the current number of fee waivers granted on eligible cases, we foresee hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue reduction in a single year to DuPage County and the clerk of the circuit court's office, depending on how far a fee waiver extends. Many of you may be familiar with SB 626 that we recently testified on. For DuPage County, we forecasted that that fee waiver would cost the county and our office $2.1 million in a single year. A revenue reduction in this amount can mean a decrease in staff, decrease in initiatives that make our courthouses more accessible, and I'll go into that in just a minute, and a substantial slowdown of the services our office is mandated to provide. With less staff, we certainly cannot provide the customer service that we are accustomed to. Daily, I have the monitors up as to how long our wait times are for people to get served, and those would dramatically increase with a reduction in our staff here. We would also have to decrease other initiatives like the development of online forms or e-orders or things that make the process run smoothly. And we would certainly have to prioritize what in our office helps us get what we're mandated to do versus what in our office helps our self-represented litigants seek access to justice. And if we're not required to do that, we're going to have to place the majority of our resources and money doing the programs that we are required to do. One moment, because I have some other numbers. In addition to cutting resources in our office, the introduction of fee waivers could be extremely burdensome to the courthouse. The introduction of fee waivers on the cases can mean thousands of new filings and may force courthouses to add a courtroom dedicated solely to hearing fee waiver applications. It would require additional resources that we simply would not have the ability to provide. And it's not just our office in the courthouse that this would affect. It would be adding another judge, having state's attorneys present to help with the cases as well. And other members, sheriff's department would have to provide deputies, things of that nature. Again, based on Senate Bill 626 that we discussed earlier, we forecasted 17,000 new fee waivers being filed in DuPage County alone. Criminal justice reform is needed. We certainly agree, but we cannot execute the mandates that are asked of us unless we have the funds to do so. We are asking that before any decision is made that will cause a decrease in revenue for the clerk's office, that an alternative revenue source is established so that we can continue to carry out our statutory responsibilities. We are already struggling, like many of your questions suggest, to figure out how to replace the funds that we know are upcoming. And to answer your questions as to what the data looks like, we're not entirely sure. We can predict what it will look like, but 2023 hasn't hit us yet. And so we don't know what cash bail is going to look like. We don't know what the removal of the warrant fee is going to look like. We can give you our best guess, and how we're going to accommodate those may require us going back to our counties to ask for more for our general fund, which is something that we don't have to do now. So any reduction in revenue to this office will certainly impact the counties, our office tremendously, and the other people that receive some of the fees associated with these types of cases. And I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Clerk Adams. Judge Donnelly.
Yes, I noted that so far the focus has been on soft stops or on the potential for bail, making an incursion into income. Has the clerk's office done any estimates, or your association, as to whether the CTAA had any substantial effect in diminishing income. Our thought was, and we consulted with clerks when we formulated the statute, was that it was fairly revenue neutral as opposed to traffic or other things. But I wondered if you had made any study or assessment of what the impact of the CTAA was on revenue.
I'm happy to take that a little bit. We have looked at the numbers as to how the CTAA has impacted us. One of the big parts of it is that COVID hit us, right? Kind of almost immediately as it rolled out. So having true numbers, we're not entirely sure of. We do think ultimately, as it stands right now, it may be revenue neutral. It may be. We just don't know after 2021 how it's going to look quite yet to see the impact that it has in our office. We do know, though, that a reduction in the fees would be a huge hit to our office.
And I think also, Judge Donnelly, that a lot of it is county specific in terms of how the CTAA has impacted certain counties. So some counties don't have very many. There was one case type, I can't remember, that was what, 2 or 3 years ago when we had to redo all of that. But there was one case type in particular that we felt after the change in the dollar amount, it either went from no fee to a very nominal fee, that we stood to lose because of the CTAA in St. Clair County, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just on that one case type. And I think we are, like I stated a little bit ago, if we could just get a pause, maybe, because it is neutral and it has the court still has the potential to thrive, not just survive, but thrive with the CTAA the way it is. But we are speaking on bond and we are speaking on the soft stops and things, because those are things that will take us from neutral to the red if we are not mindful of it and if we don't express to you all and to our legislators what the potentials are.
Thank you. Any additional questions, Judge Doherty?
In terms of comparing the effect of the CTAA in the past on criminal fees versus in the future if there are fee waivers in traffic, considering the number of cases and the rate of payment, can we expect the same outcome if we eliminate or if we allow for waivers in traffic cases as we did in criminal cases?
I'll go. Okay. So traffic cases and DUIs are oftentimes the leading case types in terms of revenue. So to extend fee waivers into those will definitely cause an issue. St. Clair County, all circuit clerks are required to report K. It's a report that we turn into the AOIC. We here have one of the largest self-represented litigant populations with my hometown and a lot of other places. And so again, it just depends on where you are. When we submitted the numbers to Britton that she gave to the AOIC in terms of what counties' ratios are in terms of what county pays higher, when people pay. And so my numbers were obviously much higher for ordered but not paid. And Candace's were much lower for ordered and not paid. So it's just, a lot of it is just going to depend on where your pockets of community members who are unable to pay versus community members. So that's why I do think it would be a good idea for all of us to get, or as many of us who can, get you any of the information that you need. So then you have a bigger picture of how it impacts Cook versus Cairo or Madison versus Winnebago. And then you have a whole picture, not just a big one, but a whole picture of all the 102 counties that provide access to justice to the to all of our citizens.
So if I could follow up, I think Clerk Adams said that on traffic cases, that there's or has been about a 90% pay rate. Is that comparable on the criminal side?
You know, I would have to pull those numbers for you. But I believe that no, there are many more fee waivers. There's a larger percentage of fee waivers that are granted on the criminal side than 90%. There's certainly a lot more fee waivers that are granted on the criminal side, percentage-wise, of criminal cases.
Yes.
Okay, I think I saw Clerk Blakeman, or former Clerk Blakeman.
No longer circuit clerk, but now with AOIC. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm Katie Blakeman. I just wanted to add, of course, I have just been added to the task force to support on behalf of AOIC, but just wanted to add that I think from my understanding, what my role will be on the task force is to assist in the collection and aggregation of all of this data that we're talking about here. I did do an extensive analysis of the potential impact of CTAA when the legislation was first proposed, and worked with sponsors on that. And I am prepared to assist in collecting any data that would be helpful. We did also just complete an analysis of the financial impact of cash bail, and those findings will be published very soon. Hopefully within the next week. They have to go to the court first, of course. But just wanted to let all of you know that I am here to help support the collection and aggregation and analysis of all of that data.
Thank you, Ms. Blakeman, and welcome. Judge Fiello?
I would be interested to know a couple of things. One is whether, with the advent of more remote hearings, whether the clerks have seen a reduction in people coming to the courthouse and a reduction in the people actually coming to the clerk's office for assistance. And number two, whether the association has thought about or looked into possible savings to the clerk's offices with the advent of more remote hearings or online dispute resolution that would keep people out of the courthouse, or maybe involving themselves with the clerk's office.
We're happy to provide numbers on that. I think that we can pull those and get those over to you pretty easily, but I will tell you, at least here in DuPage County, and I know other counties differ, we have not done any traffic courts through Zoom. So all of those cases are still in person.
We have not done traffic through Zoom either. Our numbers are just too large, and we have, even through the pandemic, we have constant window traffic. We have pro se's, like I said, a very large pro se population here, and they utilize us very much. So we have a lot of window traffic here on both the criminal and the civil side.
Yeah, even when you ask people to show up on Zoom, they still come in. And we're happy to see them.
Or they call and ask how to use it. So they still need us.
Any additional questions that anyone wishes to ask this morning? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you both for your testimony, and look forward to receiving any additional information that you wish to provide as well. And unless any members of the task force have anything else that they want to raise, and seeing no hands, this then will conclude today's public hearing. I want to again thank everyone, especially the members of the public, for attending. Your testimony has been valuable and will be carefully considered by the task force, as well as any additional information you're able to provide us with. So our hearing today then is